The Hoffman and Oeri families are one of the clearest examples that evolved from an entrepreneurial legacy into inheritance stewards. The family first created wealth through entrepreneurship and scientific business building, then preserved and expanded that wealth through disciplined multigenerational ownership. The Roche story is rooted in pharmaceuticals, chemistry, biotechnology, and long-term scientific infrastructure. Over more than a century, the family transformed a small Swiss drug company into one of the most influential healthcare empires on Earth. To understand the Roche family story, you have to go back to the late 1800s in Switzerland, specifically the city of Basel. At the center of the story was Fritz Hoffmann La Roche. Fritz Hoffmann came from a relatively educated and commercially connected Swiss environment. His family was involved in trade and business, and he grew up during a period when Europe was rapidly industrializing. Chemistry was becoming one of the most important scientific and industrial fields in the world, especially in Switzerland and Germany, where pharmaceutical and chemical research were accelerating quickly. This environment mattered enormously. Hoffmann was not simply lucky. He entered an ecosystem where chemistry, manufacturing, medicine, and industrial science were all converging at the same time. He married into another influential Swiss family, which also strengthened his business connections and financial resources. That combination of scientific awareness, commercial exposure, social networks, and access to capital gave him the ability to pursue something much larger than a local pharmacy business. In 1896, he founded what would become Roche. At the time, the pharmaceutical industry looked completely different from today. Many medicines were inconsistent, locally produced, or loosely standardized. Hoffmann recognized an opportunity that many others did not fully appreciate yet. Medicine could become industrialized, branded, standardized, and globally distributed. That insight became the foundation of the Roche empire. Instead of operating like a traditional apothecary shop, Roche focused on scientifically produced pharmaceuticals with consistent quality. The company initially specialized in vitamin preparations and chemical medicines. This may sound ordinary today, but at the turn of the 20th century, it was highly innovative. Even more importantly, Hoffmann thought internationally from the beginning. Many businesses at the time focused primarily on local or regional markets, but Roche expanded aggressively across Europe and internationally very early in its history. The company established distribution and operations outside Switzerland much sooner than many competitors. This global mindset became one of the defining characteristics of the Roche dynasty. But the company's early history was not smooth. Fritz Hoffmann La Roche died in 1920 at a relatively young age, and after his death Roche entered a financially difficult period. The company faced instability, and there was a legitimate risk that Roche could lose independence or fall apart entirely. This is where the second major family branch enters the story, the Oeri family. Over time, the Hoffman and Oeri families became deeply interconnected through inheritance, ownership, and governance. Members of the Oeri family played critical roles in stabilizing Roche and helping preserve long-term family control. This period was extremely important because many family businesses fail after the founder dies. The original visionary disappears, the next generation lacks discipline, ownership fragments, or external investors take over. But the Roche families avoided that outcome. Instead of losing the company, they doubled down on preserving ownership and long-term strategic control. That decision shaped the next century. As the pharmaceutical industry evolved, Roche expanded aggressively into new areas of medicine and scientific research. The company became deeply involved in pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, biotechnology, oncology, immunology, neuroscience, and laboratory systems. One of the most important reasons Roche succeeded was because the family and company continually reinvested into science rather than treating the company as a passive cash machine. This becomes especially important when looking at the second major area: how did the family expand or potentially destroy the wealth? The answer is that the Roche families expanded wealth extraordinarily well, primarily through disciplined reinvestment, scientific positioning, and strategic patience. Unlike dynasties that made reckless speculative bets or overleveraged themselves, Roche grew through institutional expansion and innovation. One of the most important strategic moves came decades later, when Roche aggressively embraced biotechnology. During the late 20th century, biotechnology was still viewed by many traditional pharmaceutical companies as risky and uncertain. But Roche recognized that genetic engineering and biologic medicines could fundamentally reshape healthcare. This led to one of the most important acquisitions in pharmaceutical history, Roche's investment in Genentech. Genentech was one of the pioneering biotechnology companies in the United States and became a major innovator in biologic drugs and cancer therapies. Roche first invested heavily into Genentech and eventually acquired full control. This move dramatically strengthened Roche's position in biotechnology and oncology. It also demonstrated one of the family's defining strengths, adapting to scientific shifts before many competitors fully understood them. Rather than remaining just a traditional pharmaceutical manufacturer, Roche evolved into a biotechnology and diagnostics powerhouse. This helped Roche become one of the dominant players in cancer treatment worldwide. Several Roche and Genentech therapies became blockbuster oncology drugs that transformed treatment standards globally. At the same time, Roche expanded diagnostics operations, which meant the company operated not only in medicines, but also in disease testing, laboratory systems, genetic analysis, and precision medicine infrastructure. This combination became incredibly powerful. Roche was no longer simply selling drugs. It was building a healthcare ecosystem involving diagnostics, personalized medicine, testing technologies, and biologic therapies. Importantly, the family avoided many of the catastrophic mistakes that destroyed other dynasties. There was no giant speculative collapse, no dramatic overexpansion into unrelated industries, no reckless commodity gambles, no major public family warfare that shattered the business. Instead, Roche became known for disciplined governance and relatively quiet execution. And that leads directly into the third major area: how did the wealth perform across generations? The answer is remarkably well. In fact, the Roche family story is one of the strongest examples in modern Europe of successful multigenerational wealth preservation. Many fortunes disappear within 3 generations. Heirs lose focus, ownership becomes fragmented, or the business loses competitiveness. But the Roche-related families did something different. They preserved meaningful ownership while simultaneously professionalizing management. This balance was critical. The family maintained long-term voting influence and strategic oversight while relying heavily on scientists, executives, researchers, and institutional management systems to operate the company. This prevented the business from becoming stagnant while also protecting it from short-term market pressures. Over time, the Roche fortune compounded enormously as global healthcare demand expanded. The company became one of the largest pharmaceutical and diagnostics companies in the world. Today, Roche operates across oncology, diagnostics, immunology, neuroscience, rare diseases, personalized medicine, laboratory technologies, genetic testing, biologics, and biotechnology research. The scale of the company became massive. Roche now generates tens of billions of dollars annually and operates globally across healthcare systems, hospitals, laboratories, and research institutions. Meanwhile, the descendants connected to the Hoffmann and Oeri families became some of the wealthiest people in Switzerland and Europe. But despite their immense wealth, the families remained unusually private. This privacy became another defining characteristic of the Roche dynasty. Unlike many modern billionaires who actively cultivate celebrity status, the Roche families historically emphasized discretion, governance, continuity, and institutional stability. In many ways, the family reflects traditional Swiss business culture: long-term oriented, conservative in public image, operationally disciplined, and highly focused on institutional reputation. Now to the fourth major area: what is the current status of the family today, and who is doing what? Today, Roche remains one of the largest healthcare companies in the world, and the descendants of the Hoffmann and Oeri families still maintain substantial ownership influence. The family is no longer involved in the day-to-day scientific operations in the same way as the founder, but they remain important long-term stewards and shareholders. One of the most visible modern figures connected to the dynasty has been André Hoffmann. André Hoffmann has been heavily involved in sustainability initiatives, environmental projects, governance work, and Roche-related leadership roles. Another important figure is Oeri. Oeri became known for philanthropy, arts funding, education initiatives, and cultural institutions, in addition to wealth connected to Roche ownership. The broader Roche family ecosystem today includes major shareholders, investment entities, philanthropic foundations, sustainability organizations, scientific initiatives, healthcare investments, and educational programs. Meanwhile, Roche itself continues operating at the center of global healthcare innovation. The company remains particularly strong in oncology and diagnostics, while continuing to expand into immunology, neuroscience, genetic medicine, and advanced biotechnology. The organization today reflects more than a century of accumulated scientific infrastructure, intellectual property, regulatory experience, manufacturing systems, and global healthcare relationships. And finally, the fifth major area: what lessons can be learned from the Roche family story? There are several major lessons. First, timing and environment matter enormously. Fritz Hoffmann Roche entered the pharmaceutical industry during a transformative period when chemistry, industrialization, and medicine were converging. He recognized the opportunity to industrialize medicine before much of the world fully understood how large the pharmaceutical industry could become. Second, scientific industries reward patience. Drug development and biotechnology require enormous long-term investment horizons. The Roche family succeeded partly because they maintained strategic patience rather than constantly optimizing for short-term results. Third, preserving ownership can be incredibly powerful. Many founders lose control of their companies through dilution, fragmentation, or financial pressure. The Roche families maintained enough influence to preserve long-term strategic continuity across generations. Fourth, reinvestment into innovation is essential for dynastic survival. Roche did not merely preserve old pharmaceutical products. The company continuously evolved into biotechnology, diagnostics, precision medicine, and genetic science. Families that survive for generations usually adapt technologically instead of depending entirely on legacy industries. Fifth, governance discipline matters more than people realize. One reason Roche remained stable was because the family avoided dramatic internal chaos and reckless speculation. Stability itself became a competitive advantage. And perhaps the biggest lesson is this: some of the most successful family dynasties are built quietly. The Roche-related families did not dominate through celebrity culture or political spectacle. They built influence through scientific infrastructure, institutional discipline, long-term ownership, and continuous reinvestment into innovation. Over more than a century, they transformed a Swiss pharmaceutical startup into one of the most important healthcare organizations in the modern world. Today, the Roche dynasty remains one of the clearest examples of how entrepreneurial wealth, when paired with disciplined multigenerational stewardship and scientific adaptation, can evolve into a century-spanning global healthcare empire.